Well, hello there. This is the first tea time for the Seattle Translations Film Festival brought to you by $3 Bill Cinema. And I want to start with land acknowledgement. I want to start by acknowledging that the Seattle Trans Film Festival and $3 Bill Cinema operate on the unceded ancestral lands of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, Muckleshoot, Stillaguamish, and coastal Salish people. I, myself, am presenting here from Atlanta, Georgia, which is on the Muskogee lands. It is important for us to know that the Duwamish people are still here, as well as people from indigenous territories across Turtle Island, aka North America. Find out whose land you're on by visiting native-land.ca. That's right, yes. My name is, well, I guess I should introduce myself. I am the Duchess of Grant Park. My pronouns are she, her. My title, well, it is Duchess. Hopefully we'll change it one day. And how do I describe myself? Well, let's see. I'm wearing the Queen Mary bandeau, also known as the Meghan Markle tiara. My hair is long, dark, and wavy. I have on a brightly rainbow-colored, brilliant, diamondy kind of necklacey type of thing going on there, as well as a collar necklace and a ink blue gown on, as well as white satin gloves. And I think, let's see, what else have we got here? Oh, and the festival. That's why we're here. This Translations Seattle Trans Film Festival is presented by $3 Bill Cinema, and it's running virtually from May 5th through May 8th, and in person on May 7th. You can go to the website to find out more. And I think with that said, I'm very excited to host tea time here. I do love tea. I've got my cup right here, as well as my tea sandwiches, as well as some desserts behind me. But I think now is an appropriate time to bring on our guests. Will you please pop on?
Hi.
Hello.
Hello there. So wonderful to see you all.
Great to see you too.
Oh, okay.
Sambalina,
what are you drinking there?
I'm drinking a really fancy thing of water. My cat is right here. So I have to use this lid thing that only has a little tiny hole, or else I get cat face in the water.
Totally understandable. I got you there. And I guess, why don't we start by introducing ourselves? StormMiguel, if you'll go first.
Sure, yes. I am StormMiguel Florez. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am drinking coffee today out of my Warning Transliberation is Hot mug. It is a commemorative Compton's cafeteria at 50th anniversary mug, which was, 1960. So I guess it was in 2016 when we had that event here in San Francisco. And I am the lead programmer for this year's Translations Seattle Trans Film Festival. And I'm living in San Francisco, which is on not Duwamish, on Yalama Ramatush Ohlone territory. And I'm really thrilled to be here with y'all virtually. I'm keeping it virtual this year, even though there's an in-person event, because I don't want to get on a plane right now.
Let's just completely understandable. Mm-hmm. It's quite terrifying, actually. And Sambalina, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. My name is Sam. I use he and they pronouns. I was the festival director for translations from 2013 to 2019. So that's 7 years. And I currently live in Boston. And I used the website that you mentioned at the beginning. And it says that my neck of the woods is in Quinnipiac. I don't know how to pronounce it, territory, but I'm going to learn more about it, which is awesome because I've tried looking this up and I'm like, I'm not sure the best source. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. Also, this is Filbert. Filbert uses they, them pronouns.
Hello,
it's a
Filbert.
long story.
Wait, did you say a long story?
It is a long story.
Do tell us more. I do love a good long story.
Well, the short version, because I literally tell stories that are too long. is that my cat has been gendered differently at different vets over the years. And so the most recent vet, while I was checking out, they were like, why don't we use they, them for Filbert? And these people don't know me. I was like the perfect person for them to say that to. So yeah, I think I have a non-binary cat. I'm seeing people say hi to Filbert. That's so cute.
I love that. Our cat Henri,
Yeah.
he switches between he, she, and they all the time, mainly
Nice.
because Eddie cannot remember if it's a boy or a girl, because we used to have a previous cat. So just all over the place, and we love them.
Love
Them.
it. I messed up Filbert's pronouns for the first week after deciding to use they, them, almost constantly. And I had to look at this cat and be like, look, I think you might have known about this for a while, but I'm just finding out now.
Get it together, Sam.
And I need time to adjust to this. And I was like, I understand parents of trans children a little bit better. I think the important thing is Filbert doesn't care, though. Filbert's just like, I'm a cat.
That is the most important thing for Filbert.
Yeah.
So why don't we go ahead and kick things off, and I guess opening up the question to both of y'all of how you got involved with the Translation Film Festival.
Sure.
Do you want to start, and we'll just go in like chronological?
I was gonna say
order?
chronology. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I got involved with translations in 2013. I was interested in learning about what being a programmer was, what that looked like, and had a couple of films doing the festival circuit. And so through those connections, I got in touch with the people at $3 Bill, and the folks who were working there at the time were really like my mentors. Jason and Keith were like really influential in my, career path. And they gave me a lot of information, and they invited me to be a part of it. And then I ended up taking it over as festival director. And yeah, I did it for 7 years, and I really, really deeply love $3 Bill and translations, and the fact that it is one of like a small handful of trans film festivals in the entire world. So it's really a very special thing that is happening in Seattle.
I do have a follow-up question to that. You said you wanted to be a programmer for the festival.
Yes.
Why? Not like a why, but more like a so curious. Like, you don't often hear that, and so.
Oh, well, I was working at Frameline, which is the San Francisco International LGBTQ Film Festival, in various roles. And I was like, I love being in the festival world, but these particular roles aren't fulfilling what I'm looking for. I wonder what a better role for me might be. And so I thought about all the different folks who were working that festival, because it's massive. And eventually was like, I wonder what programming looks like. I mean, from the outside, it looks like you get to be paid to fly around the world, pre-COVID, fly around the world and watch movies for a living. And I was like, I'll find out what that's like.
Okay. Was that what it was like?
No.
Thank you for being honest.
Yeah, I mean, I did get to watch a lot of movies. I got paid to do things in addition to watching the movies. But it turns out that it's an incredible amount of work that I wholeheartedly support doing and think is a fantastic job. It's just not just watching movies, it's so much. So I learned a lot. And to backtrack slightly, the festival itself started in, I forget the year. I remember Storm and I were emailing about it. But anyway, it started like a handful of years before I came on board as part of the Gender Odyssey conference that used to happen every year in Seattle. And they had Yeah, I think 2005 or 6.
2006.
Math?
We are
Anyway, and the conference organizers wanted to show some films, and they were like, hey, $3 bill, you know about films, want to show some movies at our conference? And they did that. I think they showed, like, I don't know, I think it was like 3 features and 1 shorts program, something. And they called it Translations, and it was at the conference. And then they did that the same thing the next year. And then I believe that 3rd year was when it separated from the conference and became like one of the important parts of $3 bill standalone. So, yes.
That's a lovely telling of how everything came about. And StormMiguel, now let's hear your take on it. And the first question that comes to my mind is, has being lead programmer been like Sam described it?
A dream.
Yes, exactly.
A life dream, a life goal. You know, I like Sam have started in San Francisco. We're on this like San Francisco to Seattle Film Festival organizer pipeline. And I worked at the San Francisco Transgender Film Festival for many years. Oh, and Sam, I think I've been saying erroneously that you were running the festival for over a decade. Oops, that might be in the press somewhere.
I mean, 7 years. We can just round up.
You know, in trans years, that's like
It's
half
a whole
your life,
lifetime.
right? So,
It's
but so I was working at the San Francisco Transgender Film Festival doing their social media, and did that for years. And when the pandemic hit, we started doing things virtually like everybody else, and I got more involved in helping to do some programming and just like some back end tech work and just a lot of things that I was doing more than social media, and I loved it. And I was really wanting to get involved with doing more with filmmakers. And you know, there wasn't as much happening in that festival with filmmakers, especially since things were happening virtually and we were a really small staff and really didn't have the capacity. And you know, I was kind of got to a point in my life where I was done doing social media. I didn't want to have to do kind of that as a job anymore. And so I left the festival with just like, you know, knowing that like I want to do something with programming very similar to Sam at some point. We'll see. But really then just wasn't thinking about it. Started working on my own film projects back on that. And then in November, I got a email from folks at $3 Bill Cinema asking if I wanted to come and be the lead programmer for Seattle Translations. And I was really surprised. And so we had some conversations. I was like, this is not a thing I've done before. And, you know, we talked about what it would entail. And so I decided, let's give it a try. And that was kind of what I said. I was like, let's just do for this year, see how it goes. And it's been amazing. It's been really incredible. The staff is wonderful. The volunteer, like super dedicated volunteer screening committee is just out of this world. And so it's been really cool to get to do this and have this experience. And I'm just like, I'm here. Yeah, loving it.
I love all of that so much. And I feel like that gives me a very well-rounded history of who y'all are and what y'all do for the festival and why it's so important to you all. And if you don't mind, we're going to pivot for just a little bit. And so the pandemic is the first thing that comes to mind when you think about festivals. And how has that transition been for both of you all?
the pandemic in terms of film festival.
Yeah, well, in terms of film festivals and what I guess film festivals look like before versus what they look like now, and how do you maintain that same energy and engagement? Because there's certainly definitely a different energy when you're going in person versus virtual, but at the same, it's different, but not necessarily better or worse, just different, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or did I just answer the question there?
Well, I mean, I think that like one of the things that I realize is like it's really cool for filmmakers. As a filmmaker myself, one of the things that happened during the pandemic is that my festival year that I was going to have for my latest film ended up being a virtual festival year. And I was bummed. I was just like, oh, I really wanted to travel with the film and do all this stuff. But there were festivals. I really got to see how different festivals were doing things, and a lot of festivals were really engaging folks. And Translations and Seattle Queer are two of those festivals that were really engaging filmmakers in a way that I thought was really exciting. And through that experience, I really got to see like how important it is to really continue to engage filmmakers and make them feel special, and like send them little things at the end of the festival, and just like make folks feel like they're a part of the festival, and that there's like excitement, because it is a bummer that so many people are having to kind of lose their in-person festival years. And so what the pandemic has done for me is just really just put an exclamation mark on the importance of celebrating the filmmakers, especially in festivals like this, that celebrate trans and non-binary filmmakers who don't have a huge platform out in the world, and get celebrated this way. So for me, that's what the pandemic has done. And I personally, I love virtual presenting. Like it's just something, it's my jam. I don't necessarily love leaving the house. I'll do it and I'll have a great time once I do. Once I get out that door and get to the place, I'm good. I'm fixed mutable. My signs, if we want to get into that. But so yeah, once I get there, I'm good. But so yeah, it's what it's done for me is really helped me to kind of just want filmmakers and guests to just feel connected and special. And I think it's totally doable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in terms of my thoughts on that, I didn't know, I mean, no one knew a pandemic was going to happen. And I left $3 bill to move to Boston in November of 2019. And the pandemic started in early 2020. So
It did, yes.
I have not been in that role during the pandemic. And I think from all the things that I've observed and knew already, that StormMiguel is awesome. It seems to be amazing. And I have continued to be a part of the programming team over at Frameline. And for that, it's just me sitting in the room recording intros and sometimes doing recorded Q&As over Zoom. And that's fine. But for me, the most exciting part of festivals is being there, and it's about film, but it's even more about community. And I feel like community in person, especially now, is so important, and it doesn't feel quite safe yet, and I want it to be safe to be in a theater back to how we were, and I don't know when or what that will look like, but that's what I miss.
And I definitely too miss the in-person thing. But one thing that Alana and I were talking about last night during our live is the increase to accessibility, so that we are able to build community in places and have reach in places that we weren't able to before, especially within our community, where for some it may be a lot more difficult to travel, but this affords an opportunity to engage still.
That's a very good point.
Let's pivot just a little bit more. We keep pivoting, don't we? We're dancing. You're both filmmakers.
It's like a waltz, huh?
Right, almost like a waltz. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
I just want to interject that yes, like, can I just talk about like your next what your next project is, what I know about it?
Sure, why not? Yes.
Is that out there? Please. It's out there, right?
It's out there, yes. It's quite out there.
So yeah, Her Grace is directing a film, and I think there's a feature film, right?
It sure is, yes.
Called The Waltz, and I cannot wait until it happens. I know you're in development now, and I'm just, and also your film, The Duchess of Grant Park, is going to be in the festival this year. So check it out. I really just I know you're hosting, but I want to folks to know that you are a filmmaker and a brilliant filmmaker. And so check out, and you'll see under Her Grace's work is under Ava Davis.
It sure is. Thank you so much, StormMiguel. That was very, very kind of you. And now I'm going to throw it back to the both of y'all, because my next question was going to be about the two of y'all being filmmakers. There are so many places to start with that, but let's just start being a trans queer filmmaker. How has that been for you? And Sam Berliner, let's start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure. My experience being a queer trans filmmaker has been magical. I have something that I am passionate about that I want to make films about, and that's being queer and trans. And that's great. Having a thing that you want to talk about is so great. And having the ability to engage in conversations with people all over the place, whoever is able to watch your film, is pretty awesome. So being queer and trans as a filmmaker, I think, is an asset. It means we have something important that we want to say. And in my experience, I started transitioning and thinking only about gender all the time while I was in graduate school at San Francisco State for film, for cinema. So, of course, everything I made was about that topic. And so I'm really lucky that I had that bubble of school around me so that I could figure out gender stuff and make films without being bombarded by all the other parts of life that get in the way. And so I was able to make a whole bunch of films that played all over the place, and it's been fantastic. And in fact, I haven't made a film since 2015, and it hurts my soul just a little because
Why has it been so long?
I don't have the bubble around me. I have family. I have earning a living. I have moving across the country. I have this and that. And it's like, but I'm trying to be a mime. I want that bubble back so that I can make work. And I thought that I would be able to during the pandemic. I was like, oh, this will be a good opportunity to really dive in. But it turns out there's other things that are also really important. So it always comes back to the same thing, which is trying to prioritize carving out time to work on my stuff. And the biggest thing that helps for me is having an accountability buddy or accountability buddy. And that's my friend Danny, who I know from $3 Bill also. And
Such a tight-knit family there.
Yeah. And just knowing that Danny expects me to talk about what I've done on my project in the last week is enough to get me to do it. So, yeah.
That can be a wonderful motivator, just someone being like, hey, what have you worked on so far? And it's like, well, I did try sleeping in the bed, but since you're going to ask me, I guess I'm going to sit down and write.
Yeah, I'll work on a thing. And so what I'm currently working on is a very silly project because I decided that I needed some pure joy during this really heavy time to be alive. So I thought, what brings me the most joy? Penises bring me the most joy. So
hallelujah. Thank you so much for saying it, because your grace as well. Yes, me too.
It needed to be said.
It sure did, yes.
It brings me joy. I love them. And so I'm working on a project called the Peen Zine. And it is a sing-song poem that I wrote about how they're all so different and unique, and they come in all shapes and sizes, and trans and cis and all of the above, and like bear, like super hairy, and like manscaped, and like all the things. And so I had to learn. I'll stop talking in a second. I started talking about my favorite topic. I had to learn how to draw them. I realized I had no idea how to draw them. And so I got pictures from hookup apps that I had been on over the years and just learned how to draw them by tracing them. I was like, how does this actually look? And so that's
I am dead.
really fun.
Absolutely dead. All right, StormMiguel, would you
I am
please
ready
go?
for it. I am ready for this. Yeah. Let's see. What was the question?
What's it like being a queer and trans filmmaker?
Yes.
And I ended up talking about penises.
I
And
mean,
you
it
know
all
that's
ties together. Yeah. So
really
I love it. I love I love being queer and trans, and I love being a filmmaker. And none of those things are things that I knew I would be when I was a really little kid. And a filmmaker is nothing I knew I would be until I was 40. Like I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm a late bloomer. And but I love it because yeah, like Sam said, getting to make film about something I love is just like incredible. My first film was the reason I started is I wanted to make a music video for one of my songs, and it's a country drinking song, and the music video is a zombie story. So totally not related, but then we managed to make it work because it is a heartbroken zombie, you know, roaming the streets of San Francisco, singing about um, the Manhattan drink. The song's called "I've Been to Manhattan." People often look at the music video, they're like, "That's not New York," and I'm like, "No, it's not." But the drink is a
great.
Manhattan,
It's a delicious
so
drink,
it's a
just so
delicious
everyone
drink.
knows.
Anyway, so I was able to get like amazing, beautiful, wonderful queer and trans folks, my friends and people in community, to be a part of the music video, and it was just like the most fun making that music video. And I did it through QuackMap, which is the Queer Women of Color Media Arts Project. And they work, they started out working with queer women of color and training, doing film training, and they opened it up to all trans people as well. So I was lucky enough to get to be a part of the program, and I learned how to I learned while making that music video. And one of the things I learned is I'm not a shooter, so I did some crowdsource fundraising and hired a camera person. But it was a big test for myself to see, like, can I direct? Can I edit? If I can do those things, especially if I can edit, I'm going to pursue that. And if I'm happy with it, and I was really thrilled with how it turned out, and decided I was going to pursue editing, which is the thing that I was really going to focus on. But then more things started coming along that were having me do some co-production and eventually directing. And so, and then all of the stuff I worked on has been queer and trans centered. And to me, it's like there aren't enough of our stories out there, especially as trans people, that there's so much to tell. There's just so much to tell. And even if it's a story that, has maybe been told by cis, straight, white people, it has not been told the way we can tell it. And so there's just there's just so much for us, so much potential. And so that's been all of the positive about it. Excuse me. And also, like, just a lot of frustration that we're not having the access to really get to tell our stories, and especially in a narrative feature format. And so I just I feel like there's so much more that needs to happen. As much kind of joy and fun as we get out of creating these projects, and we will make our art, right? We're one way or another, we're going to make our art. But how cool would it be if we had the access to make it big, to make big art, to make feature films, to make them, to be able to really like pay everybody well, and also like to figure out how to like bring people behind the scenes and help folks get mentored and make it so that there's a plethora of people to choose from when we need editors and shooters and makeup people and actors and everything. So yeah, there's so much more ahead that needs to happen, and I can't answer that question without addressing that.
I love that answer, and I just want to clarify what you were saying. So, in terms of access and getting to that point to making narrative features and things like that, it looks like what you just described, whether it's bringing in the teams that you described or having access to money. Is that what you were saying?
Access to money, access to resources, access to training, all of it. Mm-hmm. Access to mentorship, access to being in unions.
That's a big one. That's a very big one, especially as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
That does lead me into my next question. I feel like I just keep leading us again in a dance.
That's what we're doing. Yeah, love
magical dance, and thank you. Yes, absolutely silly. But so this next one is kind of a two-part question. The first part of the question is the importance of specifically queer spaces. And then the second part is how do we nurture more narrative filmmakers? And the first part of the question really comes from the moment I stepped into an intentionally queer performing space and what that did for me as a performer, of being able to unburden myself and give me the space to try out things. And I feel like that naturally leads into that. So yes, a two-part question. If you can remember all of it, I will try and do my best to help you remember. But Sam, if you'll take the first lead at it.
Can you say the first question again?
I'm
trying to get the essence of it.
Right. What, for you, the essence of it is, I just keep talking and talking and talking, and maybe the essence will come at some point. But what are your thoughts on intentionally queer spaces, queer and specifically queer trans spaces? For instance, this festival that we're at right now, and the importance of that as a filmmaker, as an actor, as for the culture.
Intentional queer trans spaces. Got it. Okay. They're important. They need to continue. They need to grow. They need to be nurtured. And it all has to do with community. And I think having those dedicated spaces allows people to be their most authentic selves, and ideally not even have to think about it. Like, right? Because if you're in a safe space, that's not the issue. The issue is everything else about life that you might want to talk about or need help with.
You're moving the conversation, you're furthering it along, and so you're having a deeper discussion about the issues instead of like, yes, I am a Duchess, let's keep it going.
Right, right.
But also thinking about you specifically, where you said you have not created anything since 2015, like, would a space like that be helpful for you as a creator who's already created?
That would be wonderful. I love starting things, starting groups in addition to doing festival stuff. So where I've been putting a lot of my energy is into that. Though my true love is film, and I would like to release some stuff. But I started something called Queer Scouts. And so I started it when I lived in the Bay Area. And then when I moved to Seattle, I started one there. And when I moved to Boston, I started one here. And it is a social group for queer and trans adults and allies to get together at monthly peer-led skill shares to build community, get outside. There you go. And
I love that idea.
Thanks. So that's been awesome. And that's been my example of this kind of space.
Yeah.
And people who attend are all over the spectrum, and that's awesome and not the point, unless we want it to be the point and we have a conversation about something in particular. But otherwise, it's like, oh, good, let's learn about bird watching and have it not be about our genders. What an idea.
Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And I feel that does lead into the second part. And I don't know if StormMiguel, you want to take a stab at answering the first question, or if y'all want to answer the questions together.
I mean, I could go in, because I do have things to say about queer spaces, so I could.
Let's just dive into that topic, and then we'll follow back with the other question.
Sure, yeah. So, queer spaces have been a part of my life since I came out as a young little dyke at the age of 15 in 1987. And that, there were always ways we were finding queer spaces. At that time, it was just like, well, there's a softball game happening, let's go there. We would make every place we went a queer space. And then over time, there were festivals and events and dances and all the cute things that would happen. And then in the Bay Area, same thing. It was a little harder to find queer spaces that felt really celebratory in the Bay Area initially when I got here, because it was just so many people, right? It was like you could go to a bar, you could go to this and that, and everybody was just like, oh, hi, another one, okay. And that was mostly in dyke space. And then the genderqueer kind of revolution happened in the Bay Area. in around like 2000, 2001. And there were so many amazing things popping up, and it was such a sweet and friendly and welcoming and wonderful scene. There was I don't know if you were you around at that time, Sam? Like,
I moved to the Bay in 2005.
okay, so just before you got there, and maybe a little bit still lingering when you got here, there was this whole kind of series of events. There was Hiccup, Screw Up. I forget what the other ones were, but Hiccup was a like genderqueer trans people and friends show up at there'd be a park. It'd be like, we're going to be at this park on this day. Bring anything you want. Bring your your wiffle ball. Bring your mat for wrestling with oil. Bring like whatever. And it was like the take of off on like pickup games where you do pickup basketball or something. But it was more about bring any sports skip ball type things you want or not, and like play just totally unruly everybody wins games. And so everybody just show up at the park and wrestle and play no rules, like tag, football, or probably using a stuffed animal. Like it was just silly and fun and ridiculous. And then there was Screw Up, which was a similar type of vibe, but it was a BDSM Skillshare and a DIY BDSM Skillshare. So people would show up with like, oh, here's how to make like non-leather floggers. Here's how to do boot blacking on real leather or faux leather. Here's how to I don't know. There was just a lot of different things. Here's how to like top from the bottom. Like just really fun celebratory ways of being. So like I feel like these spaces have like just been places throughout my life. Film festivals. This is another one to be able to, as a filmmaker, be in a similar space where we can talk about film. We don't have to talk about being trans, or we can if we want, but that's not necessarily the main topic. We get to come in here and talk about filmmaking and talk about technique if we want to talk about technique, or talk about process if we want to talk about process. And so yeah, I think that like last night we had speed friending, right? And we got to talk about like how we'd respond in a zombie apocalypse if we were in a mall, and like what store would be like the most useful, and just things like that. Like we
Wasn't
get to
that
do
so
that
much
in
fun?
queer space. So much fun. Yeah. So like I just feel like there's queer space is really important, so that this safe space, it's a container for us to celebrate and just be ourselves and focus on the things we want to focus on, and they are so necessary.
It is literally like having a moment where you can just breathe and be. And I love being.
Yes.
It's just very
Oh,
nice to be sometimes.
can I also add one thing?
Absolutely.
Speaking of translations and where it started, like, I feel like one of my first experience of just being like in all BIPOC trans space was at Gender Odyssey. Like that, and that was space ended up, and I was there when that space kind of wasn't there and trying to happen, and then when it got created over like the course of a few years. And so yeah, like that's another space that was really important to then just like within queer and trans space find a place that actually felt even more of a tighter container that I wanted to be in, which was BIPOC, trans, non-binary queer space. And so I just want to give a shout out for that as well, because I do feel like wanting to bring it back to Seattle. I talked a lot about San Francisco, and I want to bring it to Seattle to talk about how important it was for me to find that space and understand that was a possibility.
I have something to say about Gender Odyssey too.
Yes, please tell us.
I attended Gender Odyssey for so many years, and then ended up working it and bringing films there through $3 Bill. And I adore the people who used to put on that conference. I know it's evolved over the years since then, but that conference was what I needed at every single step of my gender journey. And it was pretty awesome to get to return to that space in a new form each year, to be like, hey, I figured this out about myself. Now I'm going to go to this workshop. And one of my films is actually based on an experience that I had at Gender Odyssey. So it used to be that if you attended the conference, you could stay at this hotel, and like a bunch of us would share a room, so it was cheaper. And there was a swimming pool at the hotel, and there was like an unofficial, and then eventually I think it became official, but unofficial pool party. And it was like, I remember my first year being invited to this pool party. I was like, I don't go swimming. I don't wear bathing. I don't know what to do with this.
That is the thing. That is definitely a
Yeah.
thing.
But everyone who was asking me were like, it's just us. Like, wear whatever you want. It doesn't matter. And I was like, oh. And so like we would take over this pool at this hotel, and there were people in all different states of transition or not transition and body things and wearing whatever they wanted, and it didn't matter. And it was this unspoken safe space. And it was so special, especially within the context of swimming. And bathing suits and all of that. So I made a short film called Float that was based on that experience. And it was trans and genderqueer people swimming, shot totally underwater in slow motion, set to a really peaceful piece of music by Ray Spoon. And there's no talking, there's no explaining. It's just existing in our bodies and celebrating them in the water. So yay, gender.
Yeah, I love that story. And I'm sure you and I were in some trans soup at some point, like in the hot tub. We would all be in there. We're like, it's trans soup. That's not quite the word we used, but
yeah. And I would use the bubbles to make a beard in the hot tub, like way back before I had facial hair. I was like, look at my beard. It was fun.
I love that so much. And I think, I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of a tear in the corner of my eye. That was a really sweet story, but I think that just saying swimming, and I think anyone who's going through their own gender journey, it's like an immediate, you just have to say swimming, and you're like, oh my God, I'm just terrified or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also leads into the next question and nuance and the importance of narrative queer trans filmmakers. And being able to tell the story like you told. And there's not really a question there so much as just your general thoughts on it.
Me?
We went with you last time, so let's go with StormMiguel. You
first.
Sure, it has to happen. More of it, and in longer form. I was talking to someone the other day and thinking about, like, I always go back to funding and access because, in programming this festival, and I'm sure you noticed this too, Sam, most feature films about trans people, I want to say 90%, 95% feature narrative films about trans and gender non-binary people are made by cis people. And so, and some folks do a great job. I'm not dissing on the cissin. I am just saying, like, we need to be telling our own stories, and we need to have the access to do that. And many of us don't. And, I want there to be, and one of the reasons too, that documentaries are so much more accessible is there are grants. There's a lot of foundations. They want to give us money to tell our stories, but they have to be issues based. They have to have a certain kind of impact. They want to know what our impact is, right? And impact often to them means they want to hear what particular kind of people who are struggling are going to be positively impacted by this film. And what I want, after seeing Disclosure, many of us know about the ways that media and narrative media and portrayals, especially in like horror and comedy of trans people, have really harmed us, like have contributed to our harm. And so what I would like to see is foundations who are giving money to understand that what the impact is us like counteracting that harm with stories that are horror films, that are comedy films, that are romances, that us telling those stories, that trans people and non-binary people telling those stories are actually impacting community and in a way that I feel like just counteracts the damage that's been done. It's barely, it's just trying to, even it out. And then we need to like continue to and make it the norm. But yeah, I think that what needs to happen is that narrative films need to be supported in that way and need to be invested in. Through foundations and through investors and through producers who are not looking for a return but wanting to actually help undo this damage that's been done.
It's so weird you mentioned impact, because what could be more impactful than a person in that community telling their story in a commercially viable way? Like, how can it not have a greater impact? It just boggles the mind, doesn't it? But Sam, your thoughts?
Yeah, that's like the core of it for me is access. I think there's a ton of people who have stuff to say. There's no question about that. But there's no access to be able to say it. Whereas there's a ton of people who don't really have anything to say, and they have the access. And that's frustrating to me.
Just gonna top off my tea.
Yes.
Some piping hot tea there.
Frustrating. So yeah, so access I think is the main thing. And what I wanted to highlight was the breakthrough stories that I've heard about and the films that I've gotten to see over the years that are narrative features by trans, gender nonconforming, non-binary, genderqueer people, because they exist. It's just
everything.
Very few and far between. So Sydney Freeland is a trans woman. She's a director. She's like made it into the realm of making like regular consumption stuff, of which I don't know because I don't watch that stuff. But prior to that, she directed the film Drunktown's Finest, which was a really successful feature-length narrative film. And she also wrote and directed Her Story. And Her Story was a web series, but I think they did also release it as a feature the way that some web series do. They kind of just string them all together. And that was super successful and went all over the place. We had it at Translations. Sydney couldn't come, but Jen Richards was there. And we got to hang out, and she's super fun. So that's one person that I have followed that I continue to see her do amazing things. There's tons of documentaries. That's not what we're talking about. But there's tons of documentaries, including like Sam Fader Disclosure, and No Ordinary Man, all the Chase Joint stuff that's happening right now, like Framing Agnes, the feature. We showed Framing Agnes, the short, the year that came out, and it won our audience award, obviously, because it was amazing. And I was like, I can't believe there's going to be a feature. Sam also did Kate Bornstein as a Queer in Pleasant Danger, the film, the documentary, same name as the book. So like there's been a lot. So I just want to acknowledge. And the most recent one that I've heard about is a feature narrative film called When Men Were Men. It's super, super brand new. And it is written, directed, produced, and starred in by two trans people. They're both non-binary, trans-masculine people. I wrote it down. Their names are Aiden Dick and Izzy Rojas. And I don't know how they did it. We need to find out how they did it and then do it again and again and again and again. So I don't know how people are doing it, but the fact that there are a handful over the years that I can think of gives me hope. Mm-hmm. And I just know that it will expand and keep going from there. But I wish I knew how.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and we'll, like I said, we always, oftentimes we'll find a way, right? It might take years to make and be on a shoestring budget and asking all of our friends for money and having a million, fundraisers and crowdsource funding campaigns. Yeah. I think about so By Hook or by Crook is our kind of retrospective feature that was made in 2001. And that was done by Harry Dodge and Silas Howard. And they're both, doing amazing work these days, still creating art, still making movies. And but that really is like the first feature narrative film by trans people that I think I ever saw. And still one of, tiny handful since 2001, right? That was 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And we're still trying to kind of be like, well, wait, who are the people doing this? Mm-hmm. And that blows my mind. But anyway, check out that film. It's showing virtually at the festival this year, By Hook or by Crook. Brilliantly, beautifully done film. And also we spoke about Framing Agnes. It is playing tomorrow at 6:45 at the Northwest Film Forum in Seattle. So if you're in Seattle, go check it out if you're doing in-person things. That's going to be
In-person
wonderful.
event, yay.
Yeah, and then also that's going to be available virtually as well. So yeah, wanted to just throw that in there.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love the most about By Hook or By Crook is that not only was it the first one of that kind that we can think of, and by all means, if there's anyone out there who knows
Yes.
earlier ones, we need to know what they are. So let us know. But I also love that film because it's a fantastic representation of the trans new wave. And the trans new wave is this concept that I talk about all the time. That
Tell us. I was going to ask about that.
that it's the idea that you can have a film that has trans people in it, but their gender is not the point of the story.
Yes.
They just embody their genders, and the story is about everything else that life is about. And so there's like some stuff about gender in By Hook or By Crook, not super a ton. It's just like being harassed for gender presentation kind of things. But mostly it's not about that. And that's so ahead of its time. And
Yeah.
I love
And
it.
it's the outside, like any of those things are the outside world. Everything else is a given, right? It's these two people don't have to explain. Nobody in the film who knows each other has to explain themselves to each other at any point.
Right.
And they're just there with a complete understanding of what the outside world is throwing at them.
Yeah.
And so, and that, yeah, that is a really beautiful thing about that film.
I love this next era of trans filmmaking that we're entering into. And you called it the queer new wave. I'm going to get it wrong.
Oh, I didn't make it up. It's called the Trans New Wave.
Trans new wave.
And my friend whose name is escaping me at this exact moment.
It happens anytime you're on air. Everything just flows out of the mind. You're like, what am I thinking?
But it's not even new though, right? Like anymore. It was new at the time when it was made up, and that was 20 years ago. It's like, so it does feel like I don't know where we're going. Like I want us to, but that's another reason it feels so important to highlight that film, is because it shows where things kind of started. And I'm also just like, I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer in the room, but I'm like, we should be so much further along than where we were when that film came out. And that film is an important marker of what I feel like we should be doing with film and should be getting funded.
I think that gets to your access thing, is that when you think about the pipeline in the ThecisStraight Pipeline, you can get a film out there a lot quicker that speaks to the issues. Whereas speaking to the issues that we want to talk about in our communities is a struggle. So that by the time you actually get it made, the conversation has moved a lot further, and you're playing this endless game of catch up, it seems. But yeah, that wasn't a question, that was just a comment.
No, it's true. And if we were getting things, funded, we'd be able to tell our stories as they're happening for sure. And also it's like never too late. Like I'm just like, because there just aren't enough of our stories, that like somebody was telling a story about something that happened in 2010, pre-pandemic. Like I don't need pandemic to be a part of it. Let's hear it. I'm hungry for it.
Right. I'm tired of the pandemic. I'm quite tired.
Oh my gosh.
Well, alrighty then. So we're going to pivot into closing, but before we're going to do a couple of things. I want to play a little game, but I also want StormMiguel to tell us what he's excited about to see at the festival and what viewers should look out for.
Oh my gosh, there's so much. Well, I mentioned two films that are happening. The in-person films tomorrow. If you're in Seattle, Framing Agnes, Gayer Caught, which is it's a similar film. It's a similar kind of genre to Framing Agnes. It's this really non-conventional way of telling a documentary, and having community be a part of that storytelling. And that's happening tomorrow. I don't know the time, but it is happening at Northwest Film Forum tomorrow in person. And the other in person is Finlandia, which is about the Mushe people, or Mushe community in Oaxaca. And that is a narrative film, really gorgeous cinematography, beautiful story. Check that one out tomorrow. Then we also have a Mixtape shorts program, and that's at 1:45. And that is just a handful of featured shorts that are also, all of these films I want to say are also available virtually. So if you can't make it tomorrow, there is an opportunity to watch them. So yeah, and the shorts program is at 1:45, and there's some amazing films there, and some local filmmakers I believe will be at that screening tomorrow. So.
And then there's also some virtual events that the festival is hosting as well, including one tonight. Am I right?
Tonight is okay. So at 11:59 tonight, so midnight. We wanted to say 11:59 so as not to confuse people. There's going to be a watch party, the Eerie Ecstasy program that is part of the virtual program. There's going to be a watch party tonight at midnight, and that is hosted by Muñeca, Seattle local performance artist, and I'm really excited about that. So, like, we're encouraging people to show up, come as you are or as you want to be. So you can show up in your fluffy PJs. I'm looking at maybe a onesie, but then maybe I'm also looking at, because it is Eerie Ecstasy, it's an 18 plus program. I have maybe a leather dog mask I might pull out. Who knows? Show up in your like fetish gear, show up in your comfy PJs, show up with your like stuffed animals, whatever you want to do. It's midnight, get cozy, or however you want to be. And that's happening tonight. Tomorrow is another tea time with the Duchess, and you will be interviewing Sarah Hill and
Flo Singer and
and who else?
Ben Dame, where there was a bit of a discussion of how to pronounce their last name.
Okay, so Ben Dame, or what do you know what films they did?
These are very good questions.
I should know this. I do know that. Okay, One Lift at a Time. Thank you. So One Lift at a Time. My name is Sarah, and the other one is another one.
It's not Heart.
Anyway. Oh no, because they're both One Lift at a Time. Ben and
yes,
and Flo.
yes,
okay.
I remember now.
Great.
Yes.
So that's tomorrow. 2 directors, 1 film for One Lift at a Time, and then Sarah Hill, who is a kind of veteran filmmaker of the festival. So that's exciting. And then on Sunday, I'll be taking over the Duchess chair. I'm not saying I'm going to be the Duchess, but the host. Let's just say I'll take over the hosting. And I will be I'm so excited about this. I get to interview Her Grace, as well as Ser Anzoátegui from the show Vida, plays Eddie in Vida, and Lily Wachowski. So that's happening on Sunday at tea time. We're also having Sunday, there's going to be the This Ends at Prom podcast live happening that day. And then also game night. We're closing out with a game night. So show up, play games, unwind, chill. It's going to be really fun. Those are Zoom events, that one's a Zoom event. The other ones are here, stream, what do we call this?
StreamYard.
Yeah, so you'll be able to catch the other ones on our YouTube channel. And and then the all day in person day tomorrow.
So much programming. I love all the opportunities. I did mention a game, and then we're going to close out with the two of you all promoting whatever projects that you have going on. But this is a little game I like to play with all guests, and we're going to start with, I'm going to give you 2 choices, and you just choose one very rapidly, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so mountain or sea?
Mountain.
Okay. Blue or orange?
Orange.
Blue.
LA or New York?
Seattle.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for that. Thank you for that correction. Okay. Tiara or crown?
Tiara.
Okay. All right. Both of you chose tiara. I love it so much. Okay. Now this next one's a bit of a doozy. So just follow along, and I promise we'll get to a point. But let's see if I can do it. Barony, county, march, duchy, kingdom, or empire?
Ooh. I don't know what a lot of those are.
That's totally fair. Just whichever one sounds.
I'm going to go with duchy.
Okay.
What was
I can
the
repeat.
first one?
Barony.
I like that word.
Okay. All right. So StormMiguel, you are a duke. And Sam, you will be the baron or baronet of... Now, this is the next one. Okay, so choose your favorite place in the world. Any place you can think of.
New Mexico.
Okay, the Duke of New Mexico. I
Oh
love
my God,
it.
the entire state?
All of it. All of it. This is where this is going. Sam, where are you going to choose?
So much pressure. I'll just say San Francisco.
I love it. The Baron of San Francisco.
Wow.
Doesn't have a nice ring to
Well,
it.
I'm in your kind of baronhood at the moment.
Yeah.
Barony.
So
I
let me
love
know
that
if you need anything.
I love that so much. Let's go ahead and close out with two
I
of
love
y'all talking about the project that y'all are working on next. And Sam, we'll start with you. Or that you're currently working on.
Pinzine.
Yeah. I hope to have it done by the end of this year. We'll see. Other than that, I've been working on episode 2 of something that came out in 2013. Okay. Episode 1 came out in 2013. Episode 2, who knows? But
never too late.
Dating Sucks, a genderqueer misadventure. It's an animated documentary about how I suck at dating. It was my thesis for graduate school. And so thanks, StormMiguel. So I have the script for episode 2. I have the storyboard for episode 2. So maybe I'll make episode 2. I would really like to do that.
You need to talk to your accountability buddy.
I know. And if anyone is curious about watching my previous films, you can find them on my website, donutfilms.org, DONUT films.org, because my last name means jelly donut in German.
That's what that's about.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
StormMiguel, you. And I know that you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, so, you and I met at the Sundance Trans Possibilities Intensive that we were both of our next projects were kind of brought into that so that we could be a part of that. And so I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And one of the biggest wonderful things that came out of that is getting to meet you and further our connection here. So that's been really great. But my next project that I got into that with it's called Welcome to Roswell. And it is my foray from documentary to narrative, and it's going to be a mockumentary. And it's kind of a sequel to my last film, which is an actual documentary. That was called The Whistle, and it's about lesbian youth culture in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And that was my life at a time, and it's still very much a part of my community and my world now. And so The Whistle was about that. And now me as a filmmaker in this film is going back to New Mexico to do something more directly focused on myself, where I'm going to Roswell, where my dad was from, to come out to my family as trans. My family knows I'm trans. It's a mockumentary. So I'm going out to come out to my family as trans and get a little bit sidetracked by my partner, who's also a film person, not my real life partner, but it's kind of based on her kind of obsession with the UFO phenomenon that happened in Roswell in 1947. And my kind of my resistance to that, I think it's like a dumb, that's just like white people nonsense from the X-Files in the 90s. So anyway, that though ends up playing a much bigger part in this adventure than I hope it will. And so that is what I can tell you about this next project, which is, like I said, a mockumentary. There might be some actual real life interviews with my real family in that as well. So it might be a little hybrid, but mostly it will be a narrative feature project.
I love that.
And if you want to check out my work, The Whistle is available on New Mexico PBS On Demand, so anybody can see it. And also check out my website, stormflorez.com.
And I also just wanted to say out loud that my friend's name is Jed Bell. Jed Bell made up the trans new wave term.
Thank you, Jed Bell.
Thank you, Jed Bell.
Debt of gratitude. Thank you so much, y'all, for joining me today, for kicking off our tea time here and telling us not only about the history of the Seattle Trans Film Festival, but telling your stories and sharing your insights into everything.
Oh my gosh, it's so great. And also, I just have to show you, I can't let this go to waste. I did make some, my partner, on a whim, made these little tea sandwiches because I was like, oh my God, I don't have time to make tea sandwiches. And then, I went to the bathroom and I came back and she's like, I made these tea sandwiches. And I was like, whoa. And then I got some little scones and
Oh.
yeah, so I'm excited to munch on these some croissant. Yeah,
Oh,
Yummy.
I love it so much. I too did a whole shebang and then realized I can't eat on air. Like it's a little bit just it's not a beautiful thing. Like there's makeup and everything. Thank you all so much for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for asking me to be here. This was so
Yes.
fun.
So much fun.
Yay.
I cannot
Yeah.
wait to talk to you all in person one day and just
Ditto.
talking again in general.
Thanks.
Well, that's all we
Well,
have.
thank you. This was so much fun. Oh my gosh.
Great.
Sorry. I'll stop now.
Yay.